समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Afghanistan is outraged after Pakistan's airstrikes killed 3 Afghan cricketers among 8 people who have been killed. A united Afghanistan has stood up to Pakistan's aggression. In fact, the captain of the Afghanistan cricket team has called the airstrikes barbaric, and Afghanistan's cricket board has announced that it is walking out of a scheduled cricket tri-series that it was set to play with both Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Amid this Afghan conflict, amid the new border war between Pakistan and Afghanistan, incidentally, the first airstrikes by Pakistan on Kabul coincided with the Taliban foreign minister's visit to India, has come a brazen new threat from Pakistan's army chief, Asim Munir. I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo Story. Even as Pakistan bombs civilians, including local cricketers in Afghanistan, Pakistan's army chief Asim Munir has made a brand new threat directed towards India. These are the cricketers that Pakistan's bombs killed. But even amid rising tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan, a virtual border war that Trump is now talking about possibly ending, and these heartbreaking images of a bloodied cricket kit that was being carried by the cricketers before Pakistan bombs took them out, Asim Munir has made a brazen and shocking new threat against India. This time, Munir, speaking at Pakistan's military academy, said that a nuclear environment was no time or no moment for war. But then he proceeded to make all kinds of anti-India statements, talking about how if there was any move from India, then Pakistan would quote unquote shatter India's assumed geographical immunity. To talk about both the Pakistan and Afghanistan border war, Pakistan's bombing of Afghan civilians, as well as the new threat from Pakistan's army chief Asim Munir, I want to welcome to the program our newsmaker today, Sushant Sareen, is with us. He's one of India's most respected and followed strategic affairs specialists and analysts. Thank you, Sushant. Let me start by asking you how you understand what's happening between Pakistan and Afghanistan. I'll come to Munir's threat against India in a moment and we'll play out that clip. But the airstrikes last night in violation of a temporary ceasefire that had been mediated between the two countries by Qatar, this time bombing civilians. 3 cricketers have been killed among the 8 killed. How do you understand what's happening? Is there a link to the Taliban foreign minister's visit to India? Is there a link to Trump wanting control of Bagram and Taliban saying no? There are Pakistani journalists who live in exile, and some of them are doing videos saying Trump might be in on this Pakistan aggression towards Afghanistan. What do you think?
Barkha, I think there's a lot of noise coming out of Pakistan. That Trump and Pakistan is a country which is notorious for conspiracy theories. They conjure up conspiracy theories in every breath they take. So I don't think Trump is pushing the Pakistanis to take the war into Afghanistan. I doubt it. So that they can get Bagram. How do they get Bagram? People look at a headline, but then they don't think ahead on how something will actually come to pass. So let us take Bagram. You've asked too many questions. On Bagram, how do you grab Bagram? The Taliban are not going to give Bagram for love or money to the Americans. No way that's going to happen. Now that means that unless you price out Bagram out of Taliban hands and Taliban control, the Americans cannot get Bagram. How do you do that? You can either create a condition of a civil war, which is what the Pakistanis are aiming to do. If you look at all the chatter and some of the statements coming out of Pakistan, they seem to be hell-bent upon a regime change inside Afghanistan, which can only happen in the event either of an invasion. But I don't think even the Pakistani Punjabi Muslim is that stupid that he will want to invade Afghanistan. Yeah, at best, what they can do is bombard Afghanistan, maybe carry out some shallow raids. But I don't see how they are going to go ahead and invade Afghanistan. They are not that stupid. But again, there is no limit to stupidity when you come down to it. So if invasion is ruled out, and I don't see the Americans coming back in a hurry, so I don't see who else is going to go and invade Afghanistan. The second is that you initiate what the Pakistanis have perfected over 3 or 4 decades, a new round of a civil war inside Afghanistan, and basically tear the country apart, carry out enormous amounts of bloodshed, and maybe you can carve out some space. But again, that's not going to happen overnight. It'll take a few years. And who knows whether the next American administration is interested in Bagram or not. So I think this Bagram seems to be a bit of, a red herring, if you will, put whatever adjective to it on, whatever you want. The other is Muttaqi's visit to New Delhi. Look, visits are not decided overnight. Now, if you look at the Pakistani media space, it'll seem as though Muttaqi goes to Moscow for the Moscow format talks. And from there, he directly comes to India because he's trying to poke the Pakistanis in the eye. Little realizing that Muttaqi was originally also supposed to go to Pakistan. That visit didn't come through. The Pakistanis also didn't seem very keen on it. And there was a UN ban on it, on his travel abroad. Later on, that ban was lifted and he was allowed to come to India. Now, this visit was weeks in the making. Now, unless it is somebody's case that, this entire fracas which broke out between Taliban and Pakistan happened to time with this visit, I think that's a bit of a stretch. To my mind, there have been serious problems between the Taliban and Pakistan right from the day the Taliban, quote unquote, broke the shackles of slavery, right? And took over Kabul and Afghanistan in 2021. From the day they took over power, there has been serious problems on the AFPAC frontier, partly because the Pakistani lies and or the self-deception, I should call it, where you will hear all those stupid generals and these Pakistani Punjabi analysts who used to defend the Afghan Taliban, saying that the Afghan Taliban are the good guys. They are not in the Indian pay. The TTP are Indian proxies, even though TTP had been created by Pakistan itself. And a former ISI chief, Shuja Pasha, had once told a number of Pakistani journalists that Baitullah Mahsood, who was then the TTP commander, this is at the time of 2611, was actually a patriotic Pakistani, as were rest of the TTP guys. These are not my words. These are Ahmad Shuja Pasha, Pakistan ISI chief's words, right? So the Pakistanis, depending on what suits them, they attach a label. So from a time when they were saying that the Afghan Taliban are different from the Pakistani Taliban, even though there were some sensible Pakistani analysts who were saying they are two sides of the same coin, they are born out of the same womb, you cannot distinguish between them, you're making a mistake. But the Pakistanis persisted with that fiction. When the boot was on the other foot and the same guy started targeting Pakistan, that is when they woke up to the reality of the self-deception they were harboring in themselves. So now you have a situation where this current conflict or breakup, if you want to call it that, between the Afghans and the Pakistanis has been years in the making. So it's not something which has happened overnight, but the immediate provocation for Pakistani attacks, and these were not the first times the Pakistanis bombed parts of Afghanistan, but this was perhaps the first time the Pakistanis were audacious enough or stupid enough to go and hit at a target in Kabul. And I think that was, in a sense, something which there was no way that the Taliban could play it down. And after that, you are on a steep slope. It's things just start, snowballing out of control, which is what has happened because it creates outrage in Afghanistan.
But what's the end game? But what's the end game? If invasion is not the, as Mutaki said, the British have tried it, the Americans have tried it, they've all had to leave. The Pakistanis probably understand that and won't try it. So if it's not invasion, what is the end game in creating this sort of chaos or precarious situation? And you say Mutaki's visit would have been planned well in advance. It's probably coincidence that the bombing of Kabul happens as Mutaki touches down in India and so on. Is there though a message to India? And is there a message to Taliban in this re-engagement that is underway between India and the Taliban?
The message which is easier to answer. Of course, the Pakistanis cannot count India engagement with any government in Afghanistan because they see it as a threat to themselves. They see it as an encirclement. They see it as a potential pincer that will catch them on the wrong foot on two fronts.
Yeah.
So there is always going to be that issue, and the problem with the Pakistanis is that they will never trust the Afghans, and the Afghans will never trust the Pakistanis. So the India factor, whether you like it or not, will always come in. There will be always somebody in Afghanistan, which is what people never understand, that the very nature of the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan will always insert India into that equation. Because the Pakistanis cannot resist or cannot hold themselves back from interfering and calling the shots and imposing themselves on Afghanistan. And the moment they do something like that, whoever is in power in Afghanistan will reach out to India as a counterbalance. So in that sense, there is never going to be any end game. Every end game in Afghanistan, as I keep saying, is the beginning of a new great game. So when a lot of people were writing epitaphs of India in August 2021, there was some of us who were saying that, wait, just watch, things are going to turn around completely, whether in a matter of weeks or maybe in a matter of months. And within a week or 10 days, it was very clear which way matters are going to go, because the Taliban, the first thing they did, that they released 5,000 odd PTP guys who had been imprisoned by the previous Afghan government, who the Pakistanis were blaming of actually sponsoring the TTP to attack Pakistan. But the former Afghan government was actually arresting those guys and putting them in prison. The Taliban, the day they came to power, they released all of them. And that was the first indication that things are not going to go well. And then, of course, within days, we saw videos of Taliban cadres going to the Durand line, to the border fencing, which the Pakistanis had recently constructed, and saying that this fencing and all, we are going to take it apart because you are in occupation of our lands. So those telltale signs that things are not going to go well. Now, when you ask what is going to be the end game, I think the Pakistani hope is that we will carry out these kind of punitive raids. We can now hit the Taliban because they're out in the open. They're no longer in hiding. Not that it takes them very long to start hiding. But because they are a government, they will have to operate in the open, which means they are easy targets. So we can target them. And that can become the template for Pakistan to ensure that the Taliban do not allow any anti-Pakistan group to take refuge in Afghanistan. Now, if that is the Pakistani game plan, broadly. The problem with that is, which I keep telling people in India as well, that when we say that we have to attack Pakistan, and I see no reason why we should not attack Pakistan when they sponsor terrorism in India, but the equation between India and Pakistan becomes very different, and I'm sure we'll come to that question when you put Asim Munir and his rants and his bizarre talk to me. But the fact of the matter is that, look, if retaliation could serve as a deterrence against terrorism or against asymmetric warfare, then Israel would have sorted out its problems many years ago, right? So it's not as though the Israelis have not targeted groups which can't hit back in the same way for decades, and yet did that stop terrorism in Israel? And Israel had capabilities and had built up capacities which are far more fearsome than anything that the Pakistanis have. So the Pakistanis need to understand that if they are looking for some kind of an end game, and if they think that the Afghans are simply going to roll over and kowtow to the Pakistani Punjabi, for whom they have nothing but utter contempt, if that is what is going to happen, then I think they have another thought coming. So what you could be seeing is a kind of an escalation, but of a sub-conventional level, with certain conventional responses coming from the Pakistanis and a sub-conventional kind of a retaliation from the Afghans, because the Afghans know that if they were to try and do anything in the conventional domain, it would be like a turkey shoot, right? So that's stupid that they'll get into that kind of a scrap. They'll hit the Pakistanis in their own way and bleed them by 1,000 cuts. The strategy the Pakistanis thought they could use against us is now going to be used against them.
Very interesting. I was just going to say that what Pakistan has attempted with India by sending in these sort of proxies and trying to bleed India by 1,000 cuts is what the Afghans are now trying with the Pakistanis. I want to take two questions from the...
Let me tell you something very interesting.
Yeah.
Everything that we have complained over decades to the Pakistanis, that our patience is running thin, that you are giving safe havens to these terror groups, that there will be hot pursuit into Afghanistan, into Pakistan. Everything that we have told the Pakistanis about their flirtation with terrorism is exactly the language which the Pakistanis are now using with the Afghans, right? And even more interesting, when Mr. Modi announced that, when he was saying that Op Sindoor is still on and that any attack will now be seen as an act of war, something similar is being said by the Pakistanis to the Afghans now. So it's quite remarkable how that whole thing has come full circle, and what the Pakistanis were inflicting on us is now being inflicted on them. Their language is the same, their responses are more or less the same, and the challenges are worse than ours, really.
Very ironic. Now, I want to take a couple of questions on what's happening inside Afghanistan, what Pakistan is trying to do. Saurav Vashish says Pakistan's message to the Taliban is simple. Just like the Islamic Republic fell with Pakistani support to the Taliban, the Pakistanis will now try and prop up the ISKP to destabilize the Taliban. And another question is from Gautam, who says, do you think China will interfere in this rift between Pakistan and Afghanistan? Let's start with the second one first. We have seen these kind of trilateral meets, not in the, just a few months ago, between Pakistan, China, and the Afghan regime. Do you believe China will step in?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the Chinese would be concerned with how this entire thing is playing out. The Chinese would be willing to play a somewhat benign role. So, for example, they tried to lure the Afghans by saying that we will extend CPEC into Afghanistan. Now, CPEC is a tough project even in Pakistan. The Chinese have lost money. The Pakistanis are losing money hand over fist on CPEC. So extending CPEC into Afghanistan, what the hell does it mean? That you will build another road? What does it mean that you will extend CPEC into Pakistan? Nobody has really specified. But it's just that bait which is, dangled before somebody. But I don't think the Chinese are either going to put boots on the ground. The Chinese would want that any of the Islamist groups which are operating against China are kept kind of bottled up and away from the Chinese frontier. But the Chinese have also developed enough capabilities to ensure that they cannot cause much damage inside China. So I think the Chinese would be concerned for their investments in Pakistan, for whatever those are worth now, their relationship with Pakistan, and how this Pakistan-Afghanistan dynamic will play out. But that is as far as the Chinese are concerned. I don't see how they are going to play any major role coming in. Maybe to the extent that if they can hold some kind of talks or mediate some kind of talks between these guys, they'll do it. But I doubt on that also, because I think the Arabs are stepping in, and let us see if that goes anywhere. I doubt if it will. So that is as far as the Chinese are concerned. The second part is on that ISKP question the guy asked.
Yeah.
Look, there are serious suspicions that the ISKP is being propped up by the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis will, of course, deny it, but the Pakistanis also denied that there was
Yeah.
any Taliban presence in Pakistan. When the
Yeah.
Americans and everybody else used to accuse them of the Quetta Shura, the Pakistanis would say this is a figment of your imagination. There is nothing called Quetta Shura. Even though everybody knew that what was the Quetta Shura was basically located in a kind of a suburb of Quetta, which was not Kaluchak, Kuchlak, that place was. So that was the place where all these guys were roaming around, and they were pretty open about it. Everybody knew about it. The Pakistanis still maintain this, the Pakistanis hold this thing against the Taliban, that the Taliban were facilitating talks between TTP and Pakistan in Afghanistan, and were claiming that the TTP is not present in Afghanistan. But the Pakistanis were holding talks between Taliban and the Americans in Pakistan, and they also claimed that there is no Taliban in Pakistan. So, everybody is playing the same game. But on the ISK, it's very interesting because the Americans are saying that we want to have anti-terror cooperation with the Pakistanis against the ISK.
Yeah.
They're not against TTP. They're not saying against Afghan Taliban. They're saying against ISK. But ISK has, and this is very credible information, that the ISK was being facilitated to set up bases in Balochistan so that they could operate on two prongs, one against the Baloch freedom fighters and the other against the Taliban, because these guys are daggers drawn with both, right? But the Baloch freedom fighters attacked those fellows and ousted them from there. Now, there is no way ISK could build their bases or try and build their camps and bases in Balochistan without the knowledge of the Pakistani authorities. Now, it might sound bizarre to people who do not understand the deviousness of the Pakistani mind, but for some of us who've studied the Pakistani mind very, very carefully and their modus operandi, it's very simple. It is not as though there is a cast iron alliance and a complete matching of interest between ISK and the Pakistanis. No, it is not. ISI and ISKP essentially are going to cooperate in some matters and are going to have a tactical alliance in on some issues on which their interests are matching, but they will also be attacking each other when it suits them, and both sides will do it. They will also facilitate each other when both sides' interests demand it. And it's a kind of a modus operandi which the Pakistanis have done earlier as well with other groups as well. So there is nothing unique about the ISKP coming in, but whether the ISKP will have the kind of that critical mass that it requires to be able to take on the Taliban, who seem to be firmly entrenched for now at least, I think that's an open question. I have serious doubts on it. So what the Pakistanis might try and do is that they will try and exploit certain divisions that have come to the fore within the Taliban ranks, especially between the Kandaharis and the guys, the Haqqani network guys from eastern Afghanistan. They will try and exploit some of those divisions. But even there, I have some doubts whether that will be very successful. It could lead to a sort of a civil war situation. But does the Haqqani network have the kind of firepower to be able to take on the very well-entrenched Taliban? Number one. Number two, do the Haqqanis want the slur of being Pakistani puppets and of working at the Pakistani behest against the Amirul Momineen on whom they've sworn fealty? Would they want to do that? So would they want to side with a foreigner against their own people? And will they be able to kind of get the kind of firepower which is required? I think there are very serious question marks around.
So here's my question to you before we move on to Asim Munir. On the Indian engagement with the Taliban, it's been debated at multiple levels. There are those who believe, looking at it through ideology and not strategy, that you can't engage with them. They have policies on women that you simply can't engage with. There are those who say a strategic reset was long overdue, but don't lionize Mutaki. There's a third view that says it's actually kind of complicated because, look, let's not forget the Haqqani network, for example. Sushant, as you know, and Shuja Pasha, the then ISI chief whom you spoke about, when Kabul fell for the first time to the Taliban, Shuja Pasha was the first person there on the ground. So how are we so sure, that those links won't be revived?
That was Faiz Hamid.
Sorry, Faiz Hamid. Sorry. Faiz Hamid. Sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Faiz Hamid. But, you get my drift. I mixed up the people there. But, what I'm asking is about those connections between Pakistan and Taliban. How do we look at it?
So, Barkha, those connections were there. Some of those connections would still be operating at a subterranean level because there would be some people, whose strings still the Pakistanis are trying to pull. But whether the people whose strings they are pulling call the shots inside Afghanistan, I think it's difficult to say whether that can happen. So those links would be there. There were many Taliban who settled in Pakistan, opened businesses, their kids got educated out there. Certainly those links are there. But you have to understand one thing. That was then. This is now. There were certain compulsions where the Taliban had to kowtow to the Pakistanis because the Pakistanis, I would have just loved to use a word which starts with B, but you understand what I'm saying. They held them by it, right? Now they don't. So the compulsions have changed, the calculations have changed, and the scenario is different now. That was then, this is now. So one is that. And yes, they were obliged at that point of time, but the Pakistanis also extracted their pound of flesh. So, well, it was a transaction which both sides went. On the Haqqani network and everything which was done against India and all of that, I take the point very well. If I had lost a colleague or a family member or anybody in any of those attacks, I would abhor the thought of, sitting and talking to the same guys. But Barkha, let's be real. Don't we talk to the Pakistanis? Have they not killed our people? Do they not send these terrorists to kill our people?
I mean, for God's sake, we played cricket with them.
Forget them, yeah. Let's talk about Kashmiri terror groups. Let's talk about Yasin Malik. Did he not kill people? Was he not responsible for many, many murders? Forget just the 4 Air Force officers in killing. He's being poked. There were so many others, so many innocent people, right? He was a terrorist. Do not put too fine a point on it. There were many others. We've interacted with them. Did we not talk to somebody like a Sayyid Ali Gilani and many of these others who were hand in glove in trying to undermine India? Have we not spoken to people, for example, in Nagaland and other places?
No, absolutely. And
today we are celebrating the surrender of Maoists who have killed thousands of people, right?
Yeah.
This is it's a bitter thing to say, but this is the reality of politics and how you do manage these affairs. And there is a certain amount of pragmatism involved in being able to reach out to people and reconcile with them. You can call it pragmatism. You can even do
and frankly, I mean, if there is security interest, why does a state talk to those who have been armed? You do it for your security. You do it because if they lay down their arms, your state will be more secure. You're talking today to the Taliban because it's in our security interest to do so. So I totally agree that there can't be virtue signaling on it beyond a point.
There have been other. So and when the Taliban were targeting us, we were also trying to target them, weren't we? Were we not supporting the guys who were hitting out at them? So if you want to really put this very cloak of that I am utterly clean and all of that, then it's okay, but then you're in the wrong business. And then the third part of it was that, and on that again, even I am conflicted. Look, I have no compunctions in saying that I do not agree with the Taliban.
Of course,
I do not accept their version of things. I find their practices, many of their practices, abhorrent. It is not something that I want to bring into India in any which way. And yet, I have dealt with even worse regimes in the past, haven't I? Before Mohammed bin Salman comes to Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia starts doing really well, takes a progressive path. What was Saudi Arabia? Tell me 20 years, 30 years back. Please tell me what was Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
This is in Saudi Arabia. Any different from what was happening in Afghanistan? Okay, maybe they allowed women to study.
I mean, yeah, they didn't bar girls from secondary school, but yes, they didn't let women drive, and yeah,
it's a matter of degrees. Okay, nothing more, nothing less, right?
Yeah.
So, look, the point is, the way I look at it, look, I find those practices abhorrent. I do not endorse those practices, but that should not stop me from engaging these people if that's in my interest. Now, what is my interest? That they are not allowing, and they have lived up to that bargain, they are not allowing Afghan soil to be used against India.
Yeah.
Now, should I not engage with them if they are delivering to me on one of my red lines? Why should I not engage with them? Now, like I said, I find their practices abhorrent, and I'm sure somebody like Prime Minister Modi, who has, made it a political platform, Nari Shashaktikaran and all of that stuff which they keep talking about, Beti Badhao, Beti Padhao, all of that. I don't see how he would also be, he endorses Taliban practices. He doesn't, right? The point is that I am not going to prescribe anything to them. I'm not in the business like the West of being prescriptive. I will deal with them at my own level, for my own purpose. I will not prescribe to them. It's their country. If their people don't like it, they are supposed to do something about it. I should not be found interfering in that country. I should not be found, hectoring them. If they ask me, I can tell them that I don't think you should do this. But I shouldn't be telling them what they should be doing.
But let me ask you actually a question that really.
Let me just say, now, where I'm conflicted is that I see no reason why we should not deal with the Taliban, but I would also agree with those who caution or who sound a note of caution, because an enemy's enemy is not always a friend.
Exactly.
So, yes, at some level, we can work with them. But the other conflict part of it is the flip side of what I'm saying is that look at my dilemma. The Taliban and the Pakistan, if they are fighting, it creates some space for me, right? But if Pakistan prevails, how is that a good thing for me?
So here's my question. That is my exact question. So Tolo News, the Afghan channel, is reporting that after these bombings, there is a delegation that has gone from Afghanistan to Pakistan for talks. Now, my question to you is...
No, they've gone to Doha. They've not gone to
Sorry, I'm sorry. What am I saying? For talks, like Doha? Yeah, sorry. I mean, talks, like Qatar is trying to mediate once again between the two countries, right? Now, my question is, if, let's say, there's another ceasefire, somewhere Pakistan bullies, prevails, as you just said, what then? What does it do to this engagement that we have, this high voltage reset?
Look, it'll be reset again if it comes down to that. If supposing Pakistan and Afghan, if in the extremely unlikely scenario that Pakistan and Afghanistan become a confederation, that the Afghans decide that they are ready to become the fifth province of Pakistan, if all of that was to happen, then of course it's a completely different ball game. And its impact on Pakistan even then is not going to change. But please try to understand where the Taliban are coming from. They're not coming from, one of those existential groups which are seeking to better life in this life, the leftist kind of rhetoric. It's not that. It's a millenarian ideology. It's working for the afterlife. It is working on very, very strict principles of what they consider Islam to be. You really think they're going to kiss and make up with the Pakistanis?
No, I think those who could withstand pressure from. Look, these are people who have driven the Russians, the Americans out. So I mean, they're a brutalized country in that way, right?
Yeah. So now here are two things I'm going to say. So one, from an Indian point of view, regardless of whether the Taliban win or the Pakistan win, my Western borders are likely to remain disturbed and unstable for me. Because the Pakistanis are no better than the Taliban as far as I'm concerned. I can assure you, and you might disagree, but the day the Pakistani Punjabi Muslim gets a chance, he will carry out the kind of massacre which history has not seen. He has that much hate filled in him. Forget about the glib talk which you keep hearing in various forums. That is what that guy is. Okay, that is his DNA basically. And if the Taliban win, it is not as though that is going to be a very benign thing for India. So regardless of who comes out on top in this particular fight, if at all somebody does, it's not necessarily a good thing with us one way or another. The second issue is that this whole thing about the Taliban beating the Americans and beating the Russians and beating everybody else, yes, they did it. They lost hundreds of thousands of lives to be able to do it.
Yes.
And yes, there was a time when, and this is where the Pakistanis are again becoming delusional, because the same Pakistanis who used to say that we had nothing to do with backing the Taliban for those 20 years while the Americans were getting their butts kicked in Afghanistan, the Pakistanis would say, we have nothing to do with the Taliban, we are completely innocent, right? Today, those same Pakistanis say the Taliban were able to defeat the Americans because we helped them do it. Okay, you understand the kind of dissemble these guys indulge in, right? So today they are saying that the Taliban could only defeat the Americans because we helped them. They could defeat the Russians because we helped them. Okay?
Right.
But back then, they did not have a state to themselves. So they needed a state, and they found strategic depth in Pakistan. Today, they have strategic depth in Afghanistan. So they don't need Pakistan to defeat Pakistan. So if Pakistanis were, really becoming very kicked about the fact that they took American money to undermine America, now the Taliban are going to use or have used Pakistani help to undermine Pakistan.
Yeah. Okay.
Their objectives are to improve Islam in Pakistan. And look at it this way. It's a fight between two versions of Islam. The hypocritical version of Islam, which the Pakistanis practice, which the Taliban call them Napak Fauj and Napak Pakistan, and they call them murtads or apostates, and doing shirk and doing bid'at. And Pakistanis say the Afghan version of Islam is not Islam. So that is, it's two competing versions of Islam fighting against each other.
Let's get to your favorite person, Asim Munir. Favorite in quotes. Asim Munir, when we were starting the show and we were talking about his latest threat, you said this is as expected. But it's a little bit intriguing what's going on because there are so many moving pieces. Let's first play this statement. He actually wants to say or partially says that in this nuclear age you can't have war, but then goes on to make a pretty provocative and inflammatory threat against India. Take a look.
Decisive blow to the adversary. Should a fresh wave of hostilities be triggered, Pakistan would respond much beyond the expectations of the initiators. With diminishing distinction between combat and communication zones, the reach and lethality of our weapon systems will shatter the misconceived immunity of India's geographic vastness. The deeply hurting retributive military and economic losses inflicted will be much beyond the imagination and calculations of the perpetrators of chaos and instability. I advise and firmly caution the Indian military leadership that there is no space for war in a nuclearized environment. Settle the core issues with Pakistan as per the international norms on the basis of equality and mutual respect. We will never be intimidated nor coerced by your rhetoric and shall respond decisively beyond proportions to even a minor provocation without any qualms.
All right. Now, the important part in that is that even if there's a minor provocation in his words, we will respond beyond proportion. Beyond proportion. So, there is India, which even after Pahalgam will say, look, we only want to target the terror bases. If you don't respond, we will not take this further. Pakistan responds, Ops Sindhu becomes what it does. And then there is Munir, who says, even a minor provocation, as he calls it, will see something beyond proportion. The last time Munir made crazy speech, 2 days later or 3 days later, was Pahalgam. I'm not trying to forecast anything here, God forbid. I'm just saying, what is this? Is this just saber rattling? What's going on? There's a border inflamed with Afghanistan. Is this an emboldened Munir because of Trump's tilt? What is going on here?
So, Barkha, one, it is the most stupid general who wants to open a second front while one front is already
Exactly.
So, he might be Trump's favorite field marshal, but he's a remarkably stupid man, apart from being a highly bigoted kind of a fellow. He's an Islamist in a Pakistan army uniform, to put it very simply. That is one. Secondly, there is also a factor that at a time when within the Pakistani public discourse, there is this thing that we are being caught on two fronts. He is basically indulging in the typical Punjabi bluster of saying, just because my Western front is active right now, don't think you can do even a minor provocation to me on the Eastern front, because I'll respond disproportionately. So that's the message he's trying to give us, right? And in part of that message is an old one, that the Pakistanis say that our doctrine is that if you do something, it will be quid pro quo plus. Okay? Whatever that plus is, but that plus turned into a bit of a minus last time around when they tried to do something. The third message he's trying to give us is, and which is, I think, a very, very dangerous message, not because India and Pakistan have not fought wars in the past, but because of what it means in a future conflict. So what were the wars that we fought in the past? In fact, in many ways, we fought very gentlemanly wars. We never targeted population centers. We never targeted economic centers of each other. Maybe an odd bomb here or there, but otherwise, we never targeted any public infrastructure unless it had some great strategic value. But otherwise, we did not do any of that. They didn't do it to us. We didn't do it to them. So it was a very gentlemanly, very chivalrous kind of wars that we fought with each other. And I know some of the people who will watch your program saying, what about all those rockets that were launched on civilian areas in Jammu? That's a different matter. But by and large, you understand what I'm saying. What Munir is now indicating is that next time around, we will not only target your population centers, we will target your economic centers. Bangalore, Bombay, Hyderabad, all of these places, because we have missiles which can reach out there. So yes, at one level, this should tell our armed forces, if they were to wake up, that listen, guys, your defense preparations and your air defense system, which is why I think the Prime Minister was speaking about that what I think Sudarshan Chakra or whatever he called it.
Yes.
One of the reasons for that is, and why we need to break the goddamn bureaucracy in this country and really move fast to develop that, that Sudarshan Chakra which he's speaking about. And even the Fauji's and their bureaucracy needs to get off, that bureaucratic malaise that equips them, apart from the civil bureaucracy. The Fauji bureaucracy is just as bad. But the fact of the matter remains, he's telling you, he's giving you advance notice, then I'm going to target all these places. So we need to, one, beef up our defenses on that point. Secondly, I think next time around, if they are going to be doing this, then I think we need to also convey to them that it doesn't take much to destroy Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad, and Pakistan is left with nothing after that. So they need to understand that this dangerous clown who they have first made army chief and now appointed as field marshal, and Nawaz Sharif has always done this. He's always picked the wrong man for the job, right? So he's picked yet another character, completely loony character whom he's put out there, who thinks that he can scare everybody with this kind of talk. But, this is utter nonsense. A lot of it is boilerplate rhetoric which generals give. But the fact of the matter remains that if these idiots in Pakistan think, and I really have nothing but contempt for these fellows because they're so intellectually poor. If he thinks that he can actually start dictating terms, that you come to the table and follow this, go FO, man. It's as simple as that. That's not going to happen, right? You can't do it to the Afghans, forget about us. So this mindset with which these idiots are operating, I think it's a very dangerous mindset. I think it's more dangerous for them because, like Mao said, he warned the Americans once that if you were ever to think of throwing nuclear bombs on me, 600 million Chinese will die, but there'll be another 100 million to make China great again. I'd say the same thing to these fellows. If you were ever to attempt something like this, 500 million Indians will die, but there'll still be 1 billion Indians left to kick your ass. So, understand this, they need to get off this hobby horse. And exactly what they're demanding of the Taliban, right, is what we are asking of them. End the nurseries of terrorism, dismantle the infrastructure of terrorism, stop exporting terrorism into India, and that's it. We are not asking for anything different. But how is it that when their guys get killed, it matters, but when they do the same thing to the other guy, he doesn't have a right to respond? Of course, we have a right to respond. And of course,
So I want to play out Rajnath Singh's statement has come just in the last few moments while we've been talking, calling Operation Sindoor a trailer, also talking about how every inch of Pakistan is now within the range of the BrahMos. I want to play out this statement. So this is, it is at least at the level of rhetoric, something seems to be escalating between India and Pakistan. Let me play out the statement and then we'll come right back.
और ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में जो हुआ वह तो सिर्फ ट्रेलर था मेरे साथियों। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में जो हुआ वह तो केवल एक ट्रेलर था, पर उस ट्रेलर ने ही पाकिस्तान को यह एहसास दिला दिया कि अगर भारत पाकिस्तान को जन्म दे सकता है तो समय आने पर वह, अब आगे मुझे बोलने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है। आप सब
So he's basically, that's a clip of his a longer bit, but if India could birth Pakistan, it can ... right? And he is speaking here, you can see the BrahMos missiles. He was speaking at a function where, the BrahMos was the flag off ceremony there for the BrahMos. How do you what do you make of this escalating rhetoric?
Barkha, I can understand that if it's a political meeting, you're making certain statements, but in a place like this, I don't think the Raksha Mantri should have said what he did. It's one thing to make political statements in the political arena, but this was not the political arena, at least not in my view. Secondly, I think there needs to be a certain gravitas when the Raksha Mantri speaks. So he needs to be a little careful on how but that maybe I'm being very conventional and about it. But I am one of those who believes, keep quiet, build up your strength, and other than, announcing on newspaper headlines that how you have reverse engineered a certain missile and brought in those systems in why do you need to say that?
Yeah.
Surprise the guy, right?
Basically, speak with actions, not words.
This bloody voyeurism which is there in us, that everybody wants to brag about things and then let out everything, say everything कि हमने सब कुछ कर दिया, हमने ये. Like I said, maybe I'm a little conventional and conservative on these matters. It's not something which I would strongly recommend for serious people. And frankly, I think Rajnath Singh is a serious man.
So-
He's not a chichora. So I don't think it behoves him to speak in this, at least not when it's not a public, it's not a political forum. Political forum में तो बहुत बोल दिया जाता है. It's okay, but this was not the occasion.
So talking about the serious people, this is the opposite of serious, but he's the most powerful, arguably the most powerful person in the world, Donald Trump. Trump has commented, he's of course repeated ad nauseum all his various claims about India, Pakistan, about India's purchase of Russian oil. But he's also spoken of the Pak-Afghan conflict. And I just want to play that out and come back to you for last comments. Take a look.
This is pretty much the last one, although I do understand that Pakistan attacked, or there is an attack going on with Afghanistan. That's an easy one for me to solve if I have to solve it. In the meantime, I have to run the USA, but I love solving wars. You know why? I like stopping people from being killed, and I've saved millions and millions of lives, and I think we're going to have success with this war.
Well, at least he says Pakistan attacked Afghanistan. He got that part right. He's emboldened. He's on a high after the Gaza Pact. You saw what happened there. Starmer getting snubbed, Shehbaz Sharif getting the stage. Munir, maybe, yes, I agree with you that because, one border is inflamed, he's sort of telling India that doesn't mean you can try anything. I guess he's trying to say that. But is he also emboldened because of Trump's very public tilt towards him in Pakistan?
Well, I would imagine so. I think that the Pakistanis are pretty enthused that there is this pact between India and the United States, and it gives them an in with the US, which otherwise had just, cast them aside and found no utility in Pakistan. That the fact that Trump finds certain utility in Pakistan will, of course, embolden them. And they, they also have this tendency of being Sheikh Chilies in their own right. So they then start imagining how life will be when America comes back and embraces them and takes them to bed once again. They become America's favorite concubine state. So yeah, that is certainly something which attracts them hell of a lot. Whether that happens or not, or Trump is just using them, we don't know. We'll wait and see. But there is, Trump's obsession with, making peace deals. Let's see how long the Gaza peace deal lasts. Let's see whether he can get one with Ukraine. And I would love for him to step into the AFPAC peace deal. Let's see how that works out for him. Last time he thought there was a very easy peace deal available between Russia and Ukraine. He said, that's just gone out of control. Maybe if he steps into the AFPAC thing, he'll do everybody a favor by making it go out of control. So let's wait and see how it works out.
All right, we leave it there. We let you go and have, sort of fireworks, the metaphorical fireworks of Diwali as opposed to the fireworks between Pakistan and...
Of Diwali, I don't know where you get this animal called green firecrackers. I've not seen them anywhere. So,
Pata nahi ye kya hai, but this needs to be inspected and investigated. I'm sure they're available and we shall see.
I don't even mind polluting firecrackers because they were great fun, but I with all my sympathies for people who have breathing problems, I kind of like, blowing up bombs all over the place.
Oh gosh.
Bombs, the benign bombs.
Yes. That's
the fun has gone out of Diwali now that,
go and have a good meal, play some tash, eat some kaju barfi, and we will return to the business of tash you don't play.
Yeah, but I can do something, of course.
Okay, thanks Sushant. Have a great Diwali. Thank you for talking to us. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.